Good afternoon, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of the Hammerhead Show. I'm Rob Schuh, representing the Sneakerheads. That is Jack the Hammer coming on to represent the Hammer side of things. I couldn't come up with anything better than that, Jack. That was the best I could do on split-second notice as far as a nickname there. I'll do better the next time, but how are you doing this fine Friday afternoon, Jack?
I love it. It's Friday, so it's a good day. It's been a busy week, but looking forward to the weekend and the game tomorrow night.
Yes, tomorrow we have more preseason action. We're going to get into it. We're going to be talking about what to watch. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there are going to be very many starters out there, but for those of us that are in tune with the 49ers this offseason, you know that it is a talented roster, extremely deep, and there will be some real battles going on of players attempting to earn a position on the 53-man roster. So Jack and I are going to go through and tell you what to watch by position groups. Want to say hello to those of you that come in the chat. Appreciate all of you. The Gabe Stivers Show coming in says, no more Stivers 209 football. Niners 209 football is the Gabe Stivers Show. Little announcement from Gabe. Jason L's coming in. Haven't been able to get on YouTube in an extremely long time. I'm glad to finally be back on and trying to catch up. Jason, it's good to have you back. Certainly good to see your name in the comments there. Tom Bragg coming in. Hi, Rob and Jack. 23 more days, faithful. We are approaching Nirvana. Yes, we are. Start that countdown clock. We're going to be getting into a countdown clock of our own here with our topics on T-minus 10 days for Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll get into that at the end of this show. Dan Rostek, Sneakerhead, here on the channel, coming in to say happy Friday to everybody who's excited for Suddy and Purdy tomorrow. The Suddy and Purdy show. It doesn't have the same ring to it as the Trey Lance show, does it, Jack?
No, not quite the same. I don't know. It's a pretty good little,
Oh, Jack. He did it to us, ladies and gentlemen. He did it to us. The Gabe Stivers Show, given the beat the Vikings drum. That one doesn't have the same charm as beat LA, but I'll take it. Beat the Vikings. John B. Sneakerhead on the channel coming out. I feel like this game is a prove-it game for the backup cornerbacks and safety. I think that as well. That's one of the position groups I'm excited to get into and talk about, Jack. That's one where I'm really looking forward to getting into that position group. And, of course, the notorious GAV coming in from Wales, Sneakerhead here on the channel. You know him. You love him. He says, bring back 49ers according to Jack or we riot. He was saying this on the program last night. He needs more regular occurrences of the 49ers according to Jack. And I have to agree with him that it's a spectacular segment.
I'll have to do that because it's something that I got away from as we got close to the training camp thing. I kind of just shot out everything that I could think of over the first 2.5 months of doing it. I had to reel myself back in, and I think I've got some good material that I can bring back up now.
Love it. We love to see it. Absolutely. Shane AZ 49ers Empire may have a new name for the show. He says, Rob Schuh, let's get hammered show. The Friday show, let's get hammered. That could work. That could work. I'm just saying 49er faithful may respond to that. Charles Alt coming in. Charles Alt, the third and the fourth, I'm guessing, are in the house here. Rob, I'm excited for the unknown of this season, and it's going to be freaking awesome to watch. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, let's get into this thing because we could keep going through the comments. People are excited, but I want to pick your brain, Jack. I want to talk about Trey's progression here because it's a hot topic. People are choosing to pick different points of Trey's game to focus on, different statistics to measure him by. But what I want to look at is the eye test, because you have been out at practices acknowledging that, you weren't out in Minnesota. And so you're watching the tape on that. And obviously when he's out on the field, you're watching the film of the Green Bay game to get that tape. What has been your impression of where Trey Lance began in the earliest practices you were able to witness to where he is now?
Yeah, I think for me, there's kind of a breaking point of around practice 10. That was practice 10 was probably his worst practice of training camp. His numbers weren't good. He was missing a lot of throws that day. They'd taken some deep shots and stuff, but he was missing a lot of other ones. And they came back after the next day that they had practice after a day off, prior to practice 11. That's when I asked Kyle Shanahan kind of what he thought of Trey Lance. Was Trey Lance meeting his expectations? And he just went into the ups and downs that he'd been going through. And let's see how he, and the last practice had been rough, and let's see how he responds to that. And ever since then, he's responded very well. If you look at his numbers prior to that point, through the first 10 practices, he was about 53%. Over the last 7, that's 6 practices in the preseason game, he's at 62%. So there's a nice progression there. And he stacked up really, 3 good practices in a row. If you look at his numbers, the last practice in Santa Clara on Monday, and then Wednesday and Thursday in Minnesota, those were pretty good days for Trey Lance. So I think that he's starting to build upon it, and it's good news for the 49ers.
Absolutely good news. And I want to commend you on the way in which you worded that question that you gave to Kyle Shanahan, because I feel like the way in which questions are worded, in particular to Kyle Shanahan, matter a great deal, because if he finds them to be sort of annoying or seeking out a specific answer, he can shut them down relatively quickly. And you watch him do that in pressers quite frequently. But when he is presented with well-worded questions that allow him to sort of expand on his own natural thoughts to a question instead of a leading question, if you will, he tends to be very straightforward in his answers. And I thought that he gave a very well thought out answer. Were you pleasantly surprised by that fact when he responded the way that he did to that question?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was really looking for a positive. I wanted to hear him kind of gush a little bit. I wanted him to tell me all the things that he was doing right, kind of thing, right? And he didn't. But that's not Kyle Shanahan's style, especially with his quarterbacks. He doesn't come out and he doesn't throw flowers at them. He's very matter of fact with how he talks about the quarterbacks to the media all the time. And so his response didn't surprise me, but I was just hoping for something a little bit more positive. But at the same time, his response was exactly what I had been saying for the first 10-week practices, and a lot of other reporters were saying the same thing as well.
And I take some comfort that he doesn't feel the need to be flowery about Trey Lance, in that if he had his trepidations about the confidence of Trey Lance's ability to handle criticism, he might feel the need to sort of, prop him up a little bit and say things that are flowery, generous, and he doesn't feel that way. And that signals to me that he feels Trey Lance is capable of hearing the criticisms and capable of responding to them.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Trey Lance seems to be somebody who has a good amount of self-confidence. And so you don't need to really kind of blow him up, just let him just say it like it is, and he understands it, and he's going to go out and try to get better, and he's going to try to make you happy.
Absolutely. Dan Rostek, Sneakerhead on the channel, coming in to say Trey doesn't need to be coddled. LOL. And we got Nick from across the pond coming in to say, good evening, lads. Nick, good to see you. For those of you that are here in the chat, go ahead and hit that like button if you enjoy the content. And Jack's information is down in the description of the video. Give him a follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and check out that platform on the Press Democrat that is linked there as well. Jack, when you look back at the early struggles, what would you say were those observations from your perspective where Trey was struggling the most? What were those things in those first 10 practices or so that really jumped off the page as things Trey needed to improve in?
There was just a lack of accuracy there was a lack of consistent accuracy. That was kind of the thing. And some of it was certain types of throws that they continually were trying to make him hit. Like the deeper outs, like the intermediate, the deep out was one that they threw a lot, and he was really struggling with that one. And every once in a while he'd struggle with the underneath throws with pressure around him, but he's improved, taking strides in there. I mentioned in the article I wrote yesterday how the first throw of the team period on Monday was an intermediate out route to Deebo Samuel on the right sideline, and just put it right between the 1 and the 9. So, that's growth, and those are the kind of things that you're looking to see. And he can make those throws. It just needs to be more consistent. And, he's getting better. He was a young guy, and we're 17 days into it, and things are, pointing up in the right direction.
And to me, this is right where we want to be, right? I know there are folks out there who were hoping for a savior to come riding in named Trey Lance and to just be the greatest quarterback since sliced bread as soon as he stepped on the field this season. And that's fair that he might be able to achieve that at some point in time. He has a physical skill set wherein you could see him being very special within this league. And it's very fair to point out that he is an inexperienced quarterback. It's why he was able to be drafted where he was and not first overall. If he had the same physical skill sets and was a polished pocket passer, you might have seen him going above the other quarterbacks selected at 1 and 2. And I certainly viewed him as the potential number 1 overall draft pick in this year's draft had he decided to go back and play another year at North Dakota. So to me, this is, I'm not coming in expecting Trey to be lights out. I acknowledge he has the potential to be there, but I'm looking at him as what I see him to be, which is a young, inexperienced quarterback with amazing physical skill sets that is partnered with an extremely intelligent head coach who knows how to put quarterbacks in the best situation to be successful. That doesn't mean it's going to be smooth sailing the entire way. But what I had hoped to see is what we are seeing right now. It is that trajectory of progress. It is Trey Lance improving in areas where he was previously struggling. And I think that should give all of us hope.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. I think that's what we're seeing. We saw some struggles. We're seeing him start to come out of it. I think maybe Shanahan's, doing some things that work a little bit better with his style and all those types of things. I think it's all positive right now. And there's going to still be ups and downs with Trey Lance. He hasn't even made his 3rd start in the NFL. So there's a long way to go with him, but right now everything's trending in the right direction.
Hasn't even had his 3rd start. And if these were his first starts as a quarterback this year, he is still like the 7th youngest quarterback to ever start a game this season, not the games that he started last season. So that is wild and something to keep your eye on as far as the youth of the young gentleman, and therefore expecting there to be some trials and tribulations. John comes in to say, Trey Lance is a student of the game. Every presser, he's always excited to watch film and learn. I do get a very solid impression of Trey Lance as he comes up to the podium. I'm thrilled to watch him throughout the season as he progresses. And Russell Peterson coming in to say, hello, guys, my 2 favorite content providers. I appreciate that, Russ. Always appreciate that.
Yes,
let's transition a little bit away from Trey, but to progression still in talking about observations from the joint practices. It was intriguing for me to watch Brandon Ayuk's response around feeling like he didn't get much value out of the time spent with the Minnesota Vikings. But over that 2-day period, Wednesday and Thursday, what were some of your high-level takeaways from those practices against the Vikings?
I think it was a little bit of, it kind of shows what happens when 2 NFL teams play against each other 2 days in a row. The first day, one team, it seemed like the Vikings did a number on the 49ers defense to an extent. I mean, they had a lot more success, let's put it that way, in one-on-ones and so on. They were dominating in those. And then you go to Thursday's practice, and that was the 49ers day. Yesterday was all about the 49ers defense, really dominating the Vikings. I've been following a bunch of the Vikings people to kind of get a better feel for it, because I want to hear what somebody that's not a 49ers fan is saying.
Right.
Not that the guys I'm also following the 49er folks that were out there too, but trying to get a second opinion on it and from a different angle,
an unbiased opinion, if you will.
Yeah, and they were like, oh yeah, like yesterday, Fred Warner is just destroying them, and Nick Bosa, and on and on and on. Yeah, it was a much better day yesterday. I think
the day yesterday from Nick Bosa seemed like a special one. I mean, it's got a lot of people talking about the potential for a 20-sack season. It was one where he seemed basically unblockable.
Yeah, well, he's looked that way throughout training camp. The only time I've seen him get stopped was when he's gone up against Trent Williams in one-on-ones at training camp. That's the only time where I've seen anybody slow him down. And Williams, I think, won all their reps against each other.
It's so wild to have those two, so close to, if not the best at their positions, going against each other every day in practice. That is a rare occurrence within the NFL, to have 2 of the best going at it on a regular basis.
Yeah, to be able to watch it, and see those 2 match up. It's pretty fun to watch.
That is very special indeed. I wanted to just bring in Carlos's question here as we're going. We're not quite to this section of looking at the individual position groups, but Carlos had a specific question about Debo and Lance. He says, do you have any concerns about the lack of chemistry with Debo? His earlier question had mentioned Lance and Debo, specifically talking about the fact that they didn't get very many reps together until Debo signed that deal and came into camp. You specifically referenced a throw that he made to Debo to start practice the other day. Are you seeing that chemistry beginning to build at this point?
Yeah, that really kind of started last week. You started to see that chemistry put together There was an article after one of the practices, that was my title, was, basically Deebo Samuel's coming around. It was, Deebo Day or something, like big day for Deebo. Yeah, those two are starting to come together. It was just a little bit of a hiccup in the beginning, but it was only a matter of time. And one guy's an all-pro wide receiver. He's gonna come around, and he has. He's made a number of really nice catches. He's had a couple of bad plays too, but that's going to happen because he doesn't have the biggest catch radius of receivers. But even day one that he was out there, not day one, but because I wasn't there day one, but like day 2 or 3 that he was out there, he had a couple of really nice catches then, and had a really nice, they ran that little screen like what they ran out in Chicago, and you could see the explosiveness once he caught the ball and started heading upfield. So it was just a matter of time for those two to click, and they're clicking.
Yeah, two very talented individuals. Just give them enough time together. It's going to start clicking. Dan Rostek coming in asking about Javon Kinlaw, saying, is Kinlaw still getting limited reps, or is he at full speed now? I haven't seen a rest day for Kinlaw recently. I know they were working him back in. It feels like they're working McGlinchey in at a slower pace than they are Kinlaw, but I heard good things about him chewing up double teams in the practices with Minnesota. It seems like the knee is holding up. Has that been your impression for Kinlaw so far?
Yeah, they've been ramping him up all along, and so he's definitely it's going, more and more from what I can gather from trying to follow along from afar. But it's Kinlaw. Kinlaw is looking good. He's looked strong. The fact that he was participating in the drills and the one-on-ones and teams so early in training camp compared to what he was doing last year, that was a big positive, especially coming off of the knee injury. To see him even getting more reps was a big positive, and I think he's going to be a big help to Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead.
Absolutely. Last question that I wanted to ask you about the observations from joint practices before moving on to the matchup against the Vikings in the preseason coming up tomorrow night is around the 49ers secondary. Obviously, we are dinged up. I was speaking to my father earlier today, and he's like, I don't want to hear the word hamstring ever again. I'm sick of it. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. But certainly the starters are not there. We're not going to see the starters on defense coming up tomorrow night either. But we did see the 49ers backups in these practices coming up against a ferocious Vikings wide receiver core. Very talented. How did you feel that those backups matched up? I mean, I suppose that you would expect them to get cooked on some level, but what was your impression of those backups for the 49ers?
They really struggled on the first day from what I saw, the one-on-ones, the videos that I saw of that. It looked like they really struggled, and it looked like yesterday was a little bit of a turnaround, like they were much better yesterday. Didn't see much from the Vikings fans. It was all from the 49ers fans yesterday. So I think the 49ers were able to kind of pick it up a little bit. That without those top two corners, it's an interesting group. And we'll get into that a little bit more when we go in, but looking at this game. But without those two, there's a lot of question marks on the outside.
I do think that it seemed in what I was reading and seeing that the pass rush really stepped up on the second day, on Thursday, and therefore that sort of made up for the secondary in that regard. But they did seem to get cooked on day one. And again, not a shocker. I mean, anytime you're out, your top two corners, any team in the league is going to struggle, in particular when you're going up against a very good unit there. We'll be talking about this, but I got to bring in Moses' comment now. He says, Rob, Schuh, jackhammer. I've been telling you about Quantrez Knight. Both of you didn't take me seriously. I have nothing against Quantrez Knight and believe him to be a capable backup. I'll be interested to see if he can push for that starting role. Doesn't seem like it, but we'll wait until we get to the DBs. Moses, just wanted to get you in here before we transition. So let's start that transition, Jag. Let's get into what to watch around the quarterbacks. And the way I'm thinking this is when we go through with what to watch, we'll talk about who we believe the starters will be. That'll be more relevant in various position groups. We're going to bring in this depth chart, which if you are on a laptop should be the right size for you to look at. This is the first draft of that 49ers depth chart that they put out. So it's still going to have those 5 players that have been released to this point. Darquez Dennard is still going to be on there. So Jack and I, this is going to be far too small to see on the screen, but I've got another copy of it here. And I know my man, Jack, he just knows everybody that's on the team from start to finish. No, I'll help out if we need any of the deeper players. but this feels like it's just going to be, one half Sudfeld, one half Purdy. Is that basically what you're expecting to see is a 50-50 split between the two backup quarterbacks?
Yeah, that would make sense to me, right? I mean, go ahead and let them each play about a half. I don't see a need to bring Purdy out after the half. This is usually would be the time where you would want to see the starter guy maybe play the whole half, maybe come out after halftime. Usually about a half, I guess, is what you'd be looking for. I think you just go ahead and you split it between Purdy and Sudfeld there.
I've been coming around on Nate Sudfeld and believing him to be a more capable backup now that I'm watching him practice in training camp and get in some of these games, because he seems to operate from within the offense, not attempting to do too much, not being overly aggressive. And when I look at the strengths of this team with a very incredible defense that has the potential to be a top unit in the NFL, a vastly improved special teams that I would expect at a minimum to be a middling unit within the NFL, and an offense that has a mobile quarterback. But if he goes down and Nate comes in, you still have a wonderful, robust running game to complement him. And so what I would be looking for, if you have a backup coming in to start 2-3 games during the season, is someone that's not going to take a whole lot of risks, that's going to play within the system, that's going to allow the defense to keep them in that game and come down to maybe one final drive where you have a shot to win it at the end of the game. And I'm starting to see that from Nate Sudfeld. What has been your impression of our backup quarterback so far in training camp?
I've been impressed. I mean, from a backup standpoint, I know that he's not going to be the starter, but he's not going to beat Trey Lance out or anything like that. But for what you're looking for in your backup, I think he hits all the all the things that you want him to do. He's efficient with the ball. Doesn't really, for the most part, he takes the easier throws instead of taking the risky ones. He seems like he's the guy that's not necessarily going to lose the game for you. He might not win it for you either, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to lose it. And that's really what hurt them so much back in 2020.
Yeah, right. You need a guy that's not going to lose those games because of that idea that it is such a talented team, that it's a team that's capable of winning with defense alone, potentially. That's how I view it, at least. That is my view. What are you seeing from Brock Purdy? Is there any chance in your mind that he could do enough in the remaining 2 games to overtake Nate Sudfeld?
No, I don't think he's going to take Nate Sudfeld. I think Sudfeld is the guy that they want to have as their backup, and I think that if there's anything with Purdy, they want him to be the third guy, like the practice squad guy that they can run their scout team, maybe be their backup quarterback of the future down the road. I don't know if they want to give a guy like Sudfeld millions of dollars to be their backup going on, but that's where Purdy would come in because he's under $1 million for his contract.
And do you see any chance with a roster this deep, needing those extra spots for some positions where you have incredible depth, players that might start on other units? Do you think there's any chance the 49ers go into the season carrying 3 quarterbacks, or is Brock Purdy headed for that practice squad, barring a swoop in waiver claim from somebody else?
Well, I mean, I don't think that that's what's going to happen. You never say no, there's no chance, but
right.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to keep 2. I don't see the 49ers waiving Brock Purdy and there being a long list of NFL executives who want to bring him onto their roster. I just don't see it.
That makes sense. And is what I have seen to this point as well. When you think about the running backs, Jack, who would you expect to not be active for this game? Certainly, I wouldn't anticipate seeing Elijah Mitchell out there. Do you think that everyone else will be up and active for game day?
I would be. I'd be a little bit surprised to see Trey Sermon, just based off of what I saw yesterday and heard was that he was limping off the field yesterday. After
got
practice.
Nicked up in the practice yesterday.
Yeah, that he looked like he might have injured his ankle a little bit, and there was a definite limp as he was getting off the field.
I saw him speaking with trainers in an image on Twitter.
Yeah, that's where I saw it was on Twitter, and they were saying that he had limped over there, and he was limping on the way to the bus and so on. So I would be a little surprised to see him go. That's the only thing, just because of the injury that I heard of, and the Niners haven't announced it, but they don't usually announce them unless Kyle Shanahan's talking to the media.
When you look at the backs at the tail end of that group, when you think of JaMycal Hasty and you think of Jordan Mason and you look at potentially Jeff Wilson Jr., Do you believe that you're most likely looking at a scenario wherein the Niners carry one of those three, or is it possible that two of those three sneak onto the 53-man in your way too early predictions?
I don't think they're going to keep 5 running backs plus Kyle Juszczyk. I don't think they'll do that.
Right.
I just think it's too many. I don't think they want to, because in order to do that, you're having to take one away from somewhere else. I don't think they want to necessarily do that at any of those other positions. Maybe my tight end, I think when I did my prediction for tight end, I had him taking 3 tight ends for the roster. But you'd have to take away a wide receiver, most likely, or an offensive lineman. I don't think they want to do that and have a running back be that person.
Any predictions for who might be the pleasant surprise at running back? It felt like we didn't really have anyone that separated themselves by a whole hell of a lot coming out of the Green Bay game. We had some decent performances, but nobody really broke it wide open. Do you think this is the game? Will someone put on some highlight reels at running back?
I hope that it comes from Tyrion Davis-Price, quite frankly, because I wasn't impressed with what I saw from him on Friday night. I didn't like what I saw, so I would like to see him put something better on film, because I want to see him hit the hole the way that we saw JaMycal Hasty hit the hole. If he does that, he's going to be really tough to bring down because he's just so big and physical. So
yeah, and you had said in your observation of him, a little bit of dancing was what you saw, right?
Yeah, I think I said he looked something like Michael Jackson out there dancing, the side to side and all that kind of stuff. He was doing a lot of dancing, not hitting the hole really hard like you would expect. And JaMycal Hasty was running with abandon downhill, and that was what you want to see from all the running backs.
Yeah, you don't want a 220 plus pound Michael Jackson, right? You want him to hit that freaking hole, hit it right away, put that girth to use. All right, 49ers First Takes coming in with the super chat. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you. Says, hey, guys, relaxing after a stream, watching my brethren. Appreciate you, Aaron. Can't wait to get a round table going where we are all talking football yet again. We will make that happen. Okay, so we're going to keep our eye out for a potential TDP breakout game. Let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers. I can't see any particular scenario wherein Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel are playing. You think anybody else is resting this game, or would you expect to see Juwan Jennings, Danny Gray, and Ray McLeod amongst all the other wide receivers out there against Minnesota?
I would think you're going to have to see some of those. They don't really have they don't have many, at this point, if you take out 3 of them, then they really don't have I think they only have about 5 guys on their roster. So right. I think you can't keep everybody off the field. Ayuk and Samuel come off. That leaves you with, I'm just looking at it really quick, that looks like 7 guys, so maybe a Jennings or I don't. So, no, I think you're going to see Danny Gray. I think you'll see Malik Turner and Jennings and McLeod. I think you'll see all of them with the exception of Ayuk and Samuel.
Yeah, and I still have my eye with this group. It still seems to make the most sense that if they carry 6 wide receivers, the first 5 seem obviously set to me. The 6th one feels like a special teams choice where you would most likely go with a Malik Turner who has that experience as a gunner and offers something beyond just being the 6th wide receiver. Obviously, we touched on the fact that if you were to carry 5 running backs and juice, that would need to eat into another position. Wide receiver would be a logical spot. As of right now, do you view 6 as the current number where you're projecting? And do you think Malik Turner is holding on to that 6th spot? Or do you have any other dark horse candidates that you're leaning towards?
It's tough. Once you get past those top 5, there hasn't really been anybody that stood out amongst the rest of them. I think, you look at Austin Mack, and he's a guy who's had a real tough time catching the ball. He's had some really bad drops. Marcus Johnson, I like him. I like Tay Martin as well. So, it's a really tight battle between Turner, Johnson, and Martin, I think.
Yeah, it's one where I don't have a clear view of anyone leading it. Again, I go with Malik Turner because of the value he adds on special teams, but that's just a gut feeling and not one where I have a whole lot of evidence backing it up. I will say people liked the choice of girth for the term that I used to talk about TDP. Yes, I heard it. It's problematic. It is problematic. It happens on live television. Sometimes you make that wrong choice, Jack, and people's minds go to the gutter, and I don't mind it. I'm here for the comedy. I'm here for the comedy gold.
I don't even know what you're talking about, man. I just, you're talking about how muscle he was. I got it. I don't know what's going on in here.
Jack gets it. Jack always gets it. All right, so let's go to the tight ends. Let's hit that tight end group because as I see it right now, right, Charlie Warner still out, who was my favorite coming in to get healthy and then claim the tight end 2 position as he had towards the tail end of last season, and then expecting someone from the remaining group to grab that tight end 3 spot, and knowing that tight end 2 and tight end 3 could be in flux throughout the season, depending on who's performing, depending upon the matchup. But it seems without activating Charlie Warner to this point that you have a very distinct possibility. He begins the season on one of the injury lists, and you have to bring on 2 players from those competing for the tight end position, in which case I would anticipate the Niners go for one player that has better catch radius, which to me jumps off the page as a Ross Dwelly or Tanner Hudson, one of those 2 making the list. And then you need someone who's a more capable blocker, and that would seem to be Tyler Kroft, who has the most NFL experience, also is capable of catching the ball, but the more skilled blocker. Number one, Jack, do you see that similarly? Do you think that it's likely Charlie Warner begins the year on one of the injured lists? And then who are your favorites among the remainder of the group?
Well, on the Warner thing, they actually activated him a few days ago, so he's off the pup list now. But they activated him. I believe it was on Sunday. Sunday and Monday, he was just worked off on the side field and did some individual work with the tight ends, and then worked off on the side field during team. I don't know what he's been doing in Minnesota. I know on Sunday, I think it was Shanahan had mentioned wanting to see him get some reps in Minnesota, but I haven't heard anything about him. So I'm not sure, but so Warner's obviously a choice. We'll see if he plays tomorrow night. That's, I think, maybe a little bit of a long shot.
That'll be a huge thing to watch for, whether he's out there, because that would be a very positive sign if he's able to play in the preseason game.
Yeah, but the thing to keep an eye on is they let go of Josh Hokett, and so they don't have a fullback. I don't think Kyle Juszczyk is going to play on Saturday night. So
it would be crazy if he did.
Right. So a team that plays with a fullback doesn't have a fullback on their roster for the night. So what are they going to do? I think you're going to see one of the tight ends play in that position, probably going to be Ross Dwelly. He was doing that a little bit on Monday. So I think that's what you'll see is one of those tight ends kind of be used as like a move guy and line up in the backfield and working from there.
Yeah, it will be fascinating to watch who fills that position. I mean, can we see a little towards the end of the game, maybe a little Poe in there? Everybody wants to see it. Everybody wants to see the 300-pound fullback in place. I want to see it. I will be honest about that. Notorious GAV making the prediction, Ross Dwelly, 100%. Looking for that Ross Dwelly catch. He had a great catch in the Green Bay game, a little bit high from Lance, and he was able to corral that. He definitely has a great catch radius and soft hands. So I would certainly look for Ross Dwelly to be in the competition, and I will be fascinated to see how many snaps he's getting and where he's getting into the game tomorrow night. Switching to the offensive line here. This one's intriguing to me because I wouldn't expect to see Trent Williams or Mike McGlinchey. And then the other 3, left guard, center, right guard, I feel like are pretty well penciled in as starters. And so I'm on the fence as to whether we will see them as not. They could all benefit from getting additional reps at the position. But if you do have them penciled in as starters, are you willing to risk their health just to get them a couple of extra snaps? What does your gut say about whether Kyle Shanahan will play Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, or Burford?
I think you're going to see that group on the field. I don't think
that was my instinct as well.
I think you'll see that group because they need the reps. It's not
right.
I understand it's a short term run, but I think they need the reps, and I think they're going to try to get them some run. I'd be surprised to not see them on the field, especially the 2 younger guys.
I think so too, and I hope that they begin to gel together. I saw some good things and obviously some areas wherein the offensive line struggled against the Packers, but more positives to take away. The positive that even when pressured came immediately up the gut, Trey Lance was able to roll out and escape the pocket. I don't anticipate Nate Sudfeld being able to do that at the exact same rate as Trey Lance, but he has shown some surprising wheels, and Kyle Shanahan has said as much. I'm also intrigued by all of the backups along the offensive line. It feels like we have a logjam of capable backup linemen, but there are some where it feels like they're on the fence. Do you think that this is the type of game that's going to be a make it or break it game for a guy like Justin Schuh, who did struggle during the game and during practices, during the game versus Green Bay, in some practices that I know you have observed? Is he a player that needs to make a statement in order to earn his way back onto the 53 man?
I think so. I think he needs to have, a good game. Jordan Mills is somebody that they brought off the street a couple of weeks ago when Jalen Moore went down. He's, from a pass blocking standpoint, I think he's a better pass blocker than Justin Schuh. I don't know if he's a better run blocker, but as far as pass protection, he's better. He's coming back from injury, but he's really just struggling in pass protection, and he just gets beat on a regular basis. It's very similar to what we saw on Friday night against the Packers. And when he misses it, it's not even usually close. And that's what's most troubling.
Painful to watch some of those misses, for sure. It made me want to get Lance out of the game immediately. And thankfully, we had that touchdown pass to Danny Gray to make me feel a little bit better about that. Chong Vang coming in to say, I hope Mills makes it. I don't have a lot of confidence in the guys in front of him, including McGlinchey, staying healthy. So that is a name to keep our eyes on. Certainly, I'm interested to see if Justin Schuh is going to climb his way back up the depth chart. We had another relevant question to this group. Shane AZ, 49ers Empire, coming in to say, do you think we will see Nick Zakelj at center this game? You think they'll give a run to the rookie who had some experience playing center in college, correct?
I don't think he ever played center in college, but I'm pretty sure he just played tackle. But this is why not? If it's in the fourth quarter, depending on what they decide to do, maybe if they use him as the third center, maybe he'll get some run in the fourth quarter or something like that. It'd be good for him if they're expecting him to play that position at all or to be ready for it. Let's get him into the game and let him play a little bit. It's not like you're dealing with a starter here who you're overly worried about him getting injured.
And it does seem like since you are sitting the vast majority of all your starters for this game, you have a lot of reps to go around. So you might as well, at the end of the roster, give some of these guys the chance to play a position that they could be asked to play in the future. It feels like Zakelj is a perfect practice squad type of guy. Get him on there, develop him for the future, and hopefully turn him into a starter going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, let him get in, let him get, got to develop him. I have a feeling that he might be a guy that sneaks onto the back end of the roster just because he was a draft pick, but you need to give him more reps than what we've seen so far. He's kind of been struggling, but he struggled early on, but you've seen him start to make improvements over the last week and a half or so.
John B comes in to ask about one other guy that I will keep my eye out for, but I just haven't seen enough to know what to expect. He says, Rob, wonder why they haven't tried Donovan West at center during one of these games. Do you expect Donovan West to make an appearance in this game, given the fact that so many players will probably be sitting this one out?
Yeah, I think we'll see him. He didn't play in the first game. I thought he did, but either way, I would think so because, he's I'm just trying to think through who they have at center right now. It's, unless I know they were using Sutherland. They kind of put him back at center a little bit because they had been using him at guard there for about a week. And
I couldn't honestly speak to the idea of whether West had any snaps in the last game. I would need to go double check that to see if John is correct that he didn't play in the game against Green Bay. To your point, on the depth chart, not many players listed at that center position.
Yeah, and they're not gonna. I mean, if you're asking about like trying him out, they're not gonna put him in with the first group. I don't think, or he hasn't earned that to be running with the starters. He's been primarily working with the third unit throughout camp.
Has he snuck in some reps where he was practicing with the twos?
I don't think so.
That's a big jump. To go from the threes up to the ones would be a big jump, not one that I expect to see. Let's make the jump over to the defensive side of the ball and talk a little bit about the defensive line. I wouldn't expect to see Samson Ebukam. I wouldn't expect to see Nick Bosa. Obviously not going to see Eric Armstead out there either. Do you think that we'll see Javon Kinlaw out there, or is that just too much risk? Are they going to shut him down with the rest of the starters?
That's funny because last Friday when we were talking about this, I said he wasn't going to play against Green Bay, and then lo and behold, he was dressed out and started.
There he was.
But with the short turnaround coming up in Houston, and just the way that Shanahan made it sound, I think anybody that you talk about that's like on the edge is going to be a no, because it sounds to me like he wants guys to be ready for that game against Houston. Like he's kind of targeting that as a dress rehearsal game. Because after that, it's 17 days before their first game. It's a long stretch. So I think he wants to try to get them in that game kind of forgoing this week's.
Who are some of the guys that you're excited to see out there that you think might flash? I would anticipate that, given the fact that the injury wasn't serious, we would see Drake Jackson back out there. I'm excited to see, Kevin Givens out there. I'm excited to see certainly Kimoko Toure, who had a great game against Green Bay and got extended reps, seemed to be a contributor both in pass rush and against the run, having some tackles for loss there. Who are some of the names that will be getting extended runs tomorrow that you're looking forward to seeing out there? Uh-oh, did I lose Jack? All right, we will keep going until we get Jack back in here. Those are the players that I'm excited in this one. I would anticipate, again, we don't see the starting four. We don't see Samson Ebukam. We don't see Javon Kinlaw. We don't see Eric Armstead, still got that lingering injury, and don't see Nick Bosa. I would anticipate that we see Drake Jackson out there. I am looking forward to seeing Kevin Givens and his quick get off on the line. It certainly could be, another standout. You might look for a Jordan Willis. Again, looking forward to Kimoko Toure being out there. This defensive line seemed to really step up and come to play today in the extended practice yesterday in the practice with the Vikings, after the defense did get a little cooked on Wednesday. So I would look for the defense to continue that resurgence, to have that fire as they come out to play Minnesota. Fred Warner was attempting to get everybody hyped up for that practice, and it appeared to work. It appeared to reinvigorate the defense, get them fired up, get them a little chippy out there, which is good to see. It's good to see the fire. It's good to see the team competing at a level where it shows they take things very seriously, that this is a championship window for them, and they are all about it. I've filled the time. Jack is back. That's my skill set. I can talk without saying anything. That's just what I do, Jack. No, I was giving him my breakdown, but who are you most excited to see out there on that stacked defensive line? Who are some of the players that you think might jump off the page given the extended run that they will get Saturday evening?
I hope that Drake Jackson gets back on the field. I know he had the stinger, but I'd like to see him. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do again, because it was impressive, some of the plays that he was able to make. Kimoko Toure, I think he should get some extra run. Hassan Ridgeway, we haven't seen him yet, and it'd be good to get him on the field. Kerry Hyder, I think Jordan Willis as well. Alex Barrett. I mean, there's a bunch of names there that are that I want to see, because Bosa, Armstead, Kinlaw, Ebukam, and Amenahu, I don't think we'll see those. I think we'll see the rest of the group.
I'm excited. So you do think that we may see a Hassan Ridgeway sighting out there, that he may make it out onto the field for the game?
I think there's a possibility. He's he's not a starter. He's a backup. And
right.
I don't believe he played last week against Green Bay. So I think there's a possibility that he gets out there tomorrow night.
And he has been practicing for a couple of days, right? The injury he was dealing with is no longer an issue, at least not holding him out of practice. So you would think, to your point, not a starter, back at practice, there's a heavy chance that he's in the game.
I don't know about heavy, but I think there's a chance. Yeah, I think I wouldn't be shocked to see him like I was surprised when I saw Kinlaw last week.
John B comes in to say he believes that the starting unit could be Jackson, Givens, Ridgeway, and Toure could be that starting line. I think, to your point, if Ridgeway is available for the game, that seems like a reasonable starting front four. When you look at this competition that's going on, specifically in talking about Kimoko Toure, if he continues to flash the way that he did against Green Bay, would you consider him to be a heavy favorite to make this roster?
Yes, because of the run defense that he brings, I think he'd be a fit, and he's a good pass rusher too. But that run defense that he displayed against Green Bay was really nice.
It really was. There were some plays that really jumped off the page for me. All right, let's transition a little bit away from the defensive line and talk about those linebackers. This is a group that, to me, it feels solidified. It feels like a group I don't think about too often as far as like, the linebackers need to do this, or someone within the linebacking core needs to prove themselves in order to earn themselves a roster spot. Do you think this group is fairly locked down? Do you see it as a chance for someone to unseat somebody like a Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, or do you think that the 5 linebackers who are most likely to make this roster are pretty set in stone with Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shire, Oren Burks, and Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles?
I think the top 5 are set unless one of them gets traded. Unless the Foreigners move off of one of them through a trade. Otherwise, the five is set with Flanagan, Fowles, and Burks as your third, 4th, and 5th guys. I think tomorrow night we'll see pretty much the same starting lineup that we saw against Green Bay. Demetrius Flanagan, Fowles, Oren Burks, and Marcelino McCurry-Ball. I think we'll see that same group. It's pretty talented. Not too bad for your second group of linebackers to be that good.
They looked great. Flanagan Fowles was hitting people. Oren Burks is a solid tackling machine, and the rookie comes away with the pick. It's a unit that, again, I'm not very worried about the linebacking core. It feels like a strength of the team along with the defensive line. That front 7 for the 49ers has the makings to be something special. I'll continue to look at the rookie and see if there's any chance he unseats Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles for that 5th spot in the linebacking core. I think I fall where you do, which is barring some type of a trade that we've most likely landed on the 5 linebackers that are going to make this roster, and then scored on a gentleman that can end up on the practice squad there in Marcelino McCrary-Ball, because he certainly looks like he can play, and he's not somebody you want to let slide. In transitioning to the secondary, which is obviously dinged up, but those guys weren't going to be starting in this game either. I want to start off by actually looking at the Vikings, because I would assume, much like the Niners, that the Vikings are not going to be starting many of their starters in this game. They're not going to be playing many of their starters in this game. And so I would anticipate, while it is a wildly talented wide receiver group for the Vikings, that it is not that front group that we're matching up against. Is that your guess as well going into this?
Say that one more time.
Would you guess that the starting wide receivers for the Vikings will play on Saturday, or do you think they'll be resting along with the 49ers starters at wide receiver?
I think they'll probably have more. I think those guys might be resting too. I don't know what their schedule looks like for their next game. I think that's partly why it's so different for the 49ers, just because they have that quick turnaround to come back on Thursday night.
The Thursday game, yeah.
Yeah, and a road game on top of it instead of playing at Levi's, meaning they've got to fly out to Houston on Wednesday and lose practice there too. So I don't think that we're going to see many of the Viking starters playing either. I think it's going to be a lot of backups in this game for both sides. I think the 49ers cornerback room is really interesting. It's very similar to what we had happen last year. A guy off the street, Ken Crawley, they bring him in a couple, was week and a half or 2 weeks into training camp. After they waived Leon O'Neal Jr., they bring in Ken Crawley, and what do you know? Ken Crawley is their top cornerback right now on their roster. He's the only guy that's been working with the ones consistently throughout the last week.
Is that who you would anticipate would be one of the starters there tomorrow night?
Yeah, I would anticipate it to be Ken Crawley, and I think the other side is probably going to be Diamondre Lenore. Ambry Thomas really seems to be falling out of favor with them right now.
It is so wild to me that the way in which Ambry Thomas's career trajectory has gone from being someone that was an afterthought to start the beginning of the season last year, many calling a bust or at least a late bloomer, coming on being the star of the season for a little bit, and then falling into a sophomore slump that feels like one he can't drag himself out of at the moment. Dirk Pippen coming in to say about the possibility of Vikings wide receivers playing, saying if they play Jefferson, they are crazy. I'm in line with that. He doesn't need any snaps. I wouldn't expect to see him out there. I wouldn't expect to see many of the Vikings starters because, again, it is a tight schedule, I think, for most teams within the preseason here. Moses came in when your screen froze up. Moses came back in to talk his trash. He says, Jack split because he knows he didn't take me serious. LOL. Moses is got a bone to pick. And so this is the time to talk about the bone that Moses has to pick with us in feeling that we did not take Quantrez Knight serious enough. So that's my question is, everyone says, well, Sam Womack had the arrival game, had his 2 interceptions. He's a guy that you've been talking about for a while, that he looked like he belonged on the field at practices from the jump. It did spawn the release of Darqueze Dennard. Do you see it as a combination factor wherein the Niners were pleased with both Samuel Womack and the progression of Quantrez Knight? Or was it purely Samuel Womack's arrival game that kicked Darqueze Dennard back out into free agency?
I think it was the Sam Womack arrival. That's kind of what Kyle Shanahan mentioned as well. Was they saw him as an ascending player. They liked what Dennard was doing, but he wasn't going to make the team, and so they decided to let him go early. I have no grief with Quantrez Knight. I think Quantrez Knight is better at safety than in the slot, and that's where he got his interception this week, was playing safety, and I think that's where he belongs.
Yeah, that absolutely feels right. John B coming in to make his prediction, and this feels close to me. John B, sneakerhead here on the channel, trying to predict the starting defensive backs, saying Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, Quantrez Knight at the nickel, and then you have Tarvarius Moore and George Odom at the safety positions. The only one that feels like it's in contradiction to what you just said a moment ago would be having Ambry Thomas out there at one of the starting outside corners. Other than that, do you feel similarly to John B? Do you think it's likely to be Tarvarius Moore and George Odom at the starting safety spots?
Yeah, if they go ahead and keep Talanoa Hufanga off the field, yeah, it would be Moore and Odom. And then on Monday at least, they had the 2 guys that were working with D'Amico Ryans in the slot during one-on-one time were Diamador Lenore and Sam Womack. So I think your starting guys are going to be I don't think that's your starting group right there. I think your starting group, Ken Crawley is going to be a starter, and then you're going to have probably Lenore, and then maybe they bring in Thomas to play on the edge when they go into nickel if they don't have Womack play, so that Lenore can go in and slide in at nickel. That's the only thing I'll say about that list is Ken Crawley needs to be one of your outside corners, because that's who's been working with the ones all week. Yeah,
you're most likely is Crawley in and Quantrez Knight out with potentially Thomas or Lenore. Thomas playing the other outside and Lenore slipping into the nickel corner position, or Lenore being outside if it is not a nickel alignment. Does that sound fair?
That if I had to bet, that's what I would do.
And here's a good question that seemed crazy to ask in the offseason. Dan Rostad coming in to say, what's the likelihood Ambry Thomas isn't going to make the 53-man roster? You think there's any possibility that the sophomore slump is enough to earn him a spot off the 53-man?
That's that's a tough one, because when you look at the way that this roster is set up, Jason Verrett, I don't think he's going to make the 53-man roster.
Right. He starts on an injury list.
Right. So if he starts off on your PUP list, and that leaves you room for an Ambry Thomas to take this, to be on the roster, right? You can get a guy like Diamador. You can have. I'm just kind of playing this through, trying to talk it out really quick.
Sure.
I think you have Travarius Ward, Emmanuel Mosley on the outside.
Right.
Sam Womack is your nickel, and then your backups would be Ken Crawley, Diamador Lenore, and then it's Ambry Thomas, Dante Johnson, Tariq Castro Fields. That's the kind of the group behind him.
Yeah, you have to start, weighing the benefits of having a guy like Dante Johnson out there who's a Swiss Army knife and can play all the positions. Or do you say to yourself, well, if we cut Dante Johnson, he's most likely going to still be available because he is a veteran, whereas Ambry Thomas is a young player. Some other secondary coach may say, I can fix exactly what's wrong with him. I can bring back out the player that we saw towards the tail end of last season, and they would swoop on him. I tend to think that young players like Ambry Thomas are given a little bit of extra leeway there. But it's tough to say because this is such a stacked roster. The 49ers may feel compelled to put the players on there that fit the puzzle pieces just right for the 53-man.
Yeah, it's just tough because, Tariq Castro-Fields, we haven't really seen much of him. He's pretty much been a guy that's been stuck with the thirds. Every once in a while, he did some stuff with the starters. What day was it? Sunday, I think it was. But then other than that, he hasn't. So it's, this is the guy that he's a 6th-round draft pick that has great measurables, but he's not showing himself, at least from what I've seen. He's not shown himself enough to be pushed up the depth chart, or at least Kyle Shanahan mentioned this the other day too. It's like he said that, just because somebody's running with the starters doesn't mean that they're necessarily number one on the depth chart. So, a guy like Castro-Fields, I really wonder where he is with this roster, the 6th-round draft pick.
Right. Whether he is at this point in time someone that would be on the fringe to the 53-man or possibly making it because he is a draft choice. They tend to get a little bit of extra leeway. I got to bring in Dirk Pippin's comment here. He's a sneakerhead here on the channel. I know he is a member of the Toolbox as well. He says, Jack, your Niner updates have been an off-season treasure. Love your write-ups in the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. I couldn't agree with Dirk more, and Jack's information is down in the description of this video. You can follow him on Twitter to get the instant stuff. You can subscribe on YouTube, hit the notification bell so that you see all his videos when he's going live. And as Dirk astutely points out here, he does the write-ups on the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. He operates that blog over there. You should bookmark that page, as I have done. Jack, always appreciate your coverage of the Niners. Let's finish out this what to watch.
Thank you, Dirk.
Yes. Thank you to Dirk. Good guy. He's a good guy. Special teams. I thought that they performed okay. There was the one return wherein it felt to me as if it was Ambry Thomas, unfortunately, lost contain on that kickoff coverage. And you had to have Robbie Gould making a damn tackle in preseason. That is not what you want to see from your aged field goal kicker. But nevertheless, it was what it was. I thought other than that, special teams held their own. I'm not really looking for a whole hell of a lot other than playing consistently. I want to see a little bit flash by Ray McLeod, who, if he's playing, I would expect to handle the vast majority of punt returns for, I don't know, say the first half. Do you have a sense for what to watch when it comes to special teams? Is there anyone that you're looking for to make a contribution when you're talking about non-special teams starters, right? These are second string guys.
I think the only thing to gather there is just who's on the field, because those are I mentioned it last Friday when we were talking about it before the game, just to see who's on there, who's on the kickoff team. For example, who's on kickoff return. Because those guys, that's where a lot of these edge guys are going to make it. And I don't have my notes right in front of me, but I remember writing down the kickoff team, and I can't remember. I think but the thing is, listen to what I just said. Then you have Josh Hokett get cut, a couple days later,
right?
And stuff like that. So, really with the special teams, you're looking for somebody that really stands out, because if there's somebody that's making a lot of plays on special teams, that's the guy that's going to make the roster too. That's, you have somebody that's just going downfield and blowing people up time and time again. That's guy's usually going to make the roster.
Right. And to your point on Hokett, with the first round of cuts, it's hard to predict sometimes because you never know when the team is doing a solid for the player, where they have some type of arrangement where they say, hey, we're going to do our best to get you out there so that you can sign with someone else. We know that you're probably not going to make the 53-man roster. There's no way the 49ers are carrying a second fullback on their 53-man. And so they may be doing a solid for Josh Hokett, with the hope that in doing so, he's incentivized to come back to their practice squad, as opposed to, now that he's signed with Arizona, eventually signing with Arizona's practice squad. If you do right by the player, they potentially come back to the organization. You maintain that relationship. So those cuts are a little bit wonky there, but I agree. Watching who's actually playing on special teams could give you a clue as to some of those tough cuts when you get down to the 53-man roster. All right, we have gone through the what to watch. People are thrilled with it. Alan Elizer, sneakerhead here on the channel, says, Rob and Jack, great show, gentlemen. Wishing all a great weekend. Bosa, that like button and sub button to Rob and Jack, or Ron, whoever the Ron guy is. I'm sure he's good too, Alan. No, obviously that is Me. I am Ron. I am Ron. No, let's get into the last topic because it's a good one. Like, this isn't meant to be a send-off of poor Jimmy G at this point. But I think it's time to celebrate that the chaos, the madness, having to talk about it endlessly may, keyword here being may, be coming to an end because we at least have a deadline. August 30th is the day in which I think it's 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, but didn't verify that prior to saying that. That's just generally when league things happen in the NFL, is when the Niners either cut Jimmy Garoppolo, have traded him by that point, or the salary becomes guaranteed. So that's a hard deadline. Jack, first thing I want to ask you is, would you agree that August 30th date is a very specific date to keep your eye on with regard to James Garoppolo?
Yeah, I think that is the key day when it comes to Garoppolo. The 49ers don't want to get locked into that contract, so I think it'd be very interesting, to say the least, if they keep a guy around on their 53-man roster that hasn't been in a single meeting throughout training camp, doesn't even have a playbook, according to Kyle Shanahan. I think it'd be interesting if they just keep him around just to keep him around.
That would be wild. And so viewing that August 30th date as a final date for some type of news, even if it's news that some 49er faithful wouldn't want to have, that means we are starting the clock T-minus 10 days. Count this thing down. We have an actual deadline in place. Here's what I want to ask, Jack, your gut instinct. If we do not see a critical injury to the quarterback position somewhere in the NFL over the next 10 days, what does your gut say happens with Jimmy Garoppolo? Are there any of the teams out there right now that have motivation to trade for Jimmy that you think get a deal done? Or are you pretty locked in on the idea that as we draw closer to August 30th, we will hear Jimmy Garoppolo getting cut?
It seems to me that he's going to get cut. If you're the Browns and you know that you don't have your starting quarterback for 11 weeks, the only way that you can guarantee yourself that that you can get Jimmy Garoppolo, if you want to bring him in, is to make a trade. You can't guarantee that you're going to get it if you let him get cut, because then all 32 teams have a shot at him. So I think he's going to end up getting cut, because I would think that either Cleveland or Seattle or one of these teams that really is struggling with quarterback play would be trying to make a move for him if they felt like they wanted to have him be the quarterback. Because this is the time. There's only 3 weeks left in the season. And if you don't bring him in, you're looking at, it being multiple weeks into the season before he's ready to go anyway, before he knows enough of the playbook to really be able to operate your system.
Right. Because not all of those teams, there would be a lot of teams interested, I believe, once Jimmy Garoppolo is cut, if he is in fact cut. They're coming in to say, oh my God, 10 days. Niners Twitter is going to be so fire. Yeah, unfortunately, it is going to be something to watch there. But of those teams that are interested, right, not all of them can feel so self-assured that Jimmy is going to choose them. To your point, if he is released, it now becomes, where does Jimmy want to go? If you're a team like Cleveland who's looking for a short-term rental, if you believe you can roll with Jacoby Brissett, by all means do that. If you think you need Jimmy Garoppolo and you believe he's going to choose you as a team that only needs him for 11 games, where, yeah, he knows the system because it's similar to what Shanahan is running, but he hasn't come in and been able to look at the playbook, and he's probably not going to get an extension with the Browns, I just don't think they would be at the top of his list. So that brings up my question to you. If this plays out, Jimmy Garoppolo is released as we get closer to August 30th, and Jimmy has his choice of teams, do you have any gut feeling about who might be at the top of his list? Do you think there's a heavy chance that he ends up in Seattle? Because that feels like a possible destination at this point.
Yeah, I think Seattle, and again, you just go with those same teams, and really, I have no idea what's going on here. I keep trying to act like I do. I thought I did, back early on in the summer, even midway through the summer, I felt like I knew what the heck I was talking about. But really, to be completely honest, I don't have any clue what's going on with Jimmy Garoppolo. If he's not getting any kind of action, as far as teams wanting him, at least, I don't know where he ends up. It's, you can look at around the league, you can see the teams that are quarterback needy. Pete mentions the Giants over there. You have Seattle, you have Cleveland. I think even Houston to an extent would be better with him. But
right,
at this point, it's just throwing darts at a board, hoping that I hit the wall.
It is. I felt so secure in my prediction of Jimmy Garoppolo getting traded, and recently have had to eat a significant amount of crow when addressing E. Kim about his view that Jimmy Garoppolo never had any trade value. And I stand by the idea that at some point he did. The Niners just botched this situation. They overplayed their hand, and that was certainly assisted by the timing of the surgery. But I believe had they played it differently, they could have gotten something for Jimmy Garoppolo and just mishandled it.
Yeah, I don't know if they mishandled it or if it was just the whole situation with the shoulder.
Yeah.
A little bit of, I don't know what the 49ers could have done different because, the surgery, the only thing that they could have done different, if you want to say it, they made a mistake. Where they made the mistake was letting Garoppolo play in the playoffs because the injury to the thumb is what led to the injury to the shoulder. But beyond that, I don't know how you could say that they've made a mistake in the offseason. Nobody wants to trade for him, and I think part of it's because of the arm and part of it's because of the salary.
And I do like Dirk's comment here. This poker game ain't over. Don't fold. The Niners aren't showing any weakness here. They are not folding yet. They're holding strong until the very last moment, and then I suspect they will fold at that point. But I like Jerome coming in. To your point, Jack, we have no idea how this plays out. Jerome says, Rob and Jack, bizarro world theory. Jimmy G gets cut and then re-signs with the Niners as Trey's backup when he gets no other offers. I am not buying that one, but it would be a bizarro turnout to this Jimmy G saga. It would drive the Niner faithful crazy to have to talk about it. It would drive me, admittedly, a bit crazy to have to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. That would be. That's not going to happen, but that would be interesting. Earlier somebody called you Ron. So if you're Ron Burgundy, I guess that makes me champ kind. Is that who I am?
Yes, you could be champ. Champ's a good role to have. Dan Rostek says Niners have been bluffing with their face cards up. LOL. Yeah, their bluff, whatever the poker analogy is, the Niners have not been killing it. I'm going to be going to play poker tonight. I hope I have a better end result than what the Niners have had with this poker game for Jimmy Garoppolo, because it feels like it is not going to end well. Seems like a cut upcoming, which is something I did not predict in this offseason. Jack, this has been a fantastic show. As always, thank you so much for being a part of the program, my friend.
No, it's always fun to come on and talk ball with you, talk about the 49ers with you, Rob, and I appreciate you guys in the your fans in the comment section. They're always a good group as well. Look at all those dollar signs you have on the side over there. That's pretty impressive. They're
good people. The Sneakerhead crew are an amazing bunch. Let me tell you that. I had that call yesterday. This was sort of a weird week for me. I had a little bit early on in the week, was dealing with some personal stuff, not feeling great. Members of the Sneakerhead crew reach out, man. They check in on me. I absolutely love this channel. Love talking Niners with guys like yourself, Jack. Look forward to catching up with you after the game when you and I connect on your channel on Monday to break it down. I think it's going to be a fascinating game to watch, even though we don't see the starters. This is a very competitive roster, top to bottom. And so I think the matchups still matter. The snaps still matter. Who's out there on special teams will matter in shaping this 53-man roster. Like I said, Jack, always a pleasure to have you on. Look forward to being back on your channel. Agree with Dirk that the chat rules on this channel. Let's fricking go. Appreciate you all. Dan Rostek, Sneakerhead in the toolbox. I'm telling you, good stuff. Thank you to everyone. We will see you again soon. And until then, cheers, faithful.